Hi, everyone. Many a millennial has lost connection to Winston Smith. It shouldn't come as a surprise. The Winston Smith is the protagonist of a book that fell out of vogue shortly after its ominous date and title passed. You see, Winston Smith was part of a work written by George Orwell called 1984. In the work, the protagonist, Winston Smith, had a job in the records department, and his job was to rewrite historical works to match the party's latest version of reality. If the party had once been at war with Eurasia, but now is at war with East Asia, then Winston and his colleagues were supposed to destroy all old newspapers and speeches and reports that say otherwise, placing them in some sort of incinerator called a memory hole. Smith was to create new, falsified documents to make it appear as though East Asia was always the enemy. When a party member fell out of favor, all traces of their existence were erased. Winston remembered a time when an important official, Comrade Withers, was praised by Big Brother. One day, Orwell writes, Withers was suddenly declared a traitor, and Winston's job? To rewrite history so that Withers never existed in the first place. Many a high school English class, and perhaps some college courses as well, studied Orwell's 1984 and specifically highlighted the true horror of the memory hole. It wasn't only the destruction of the documents, it was about the destruction of truth itself. After all, if history is rewritten and no records exist to prove otherwise, people have no way of knowing what's real. They become forced to accept the party's version of reality, even when they know that it's a lie. For students, this often raised a series of critical questions. If all evidence of an event or a person is erased, did it really or did he really exist? And by the way, if the past is able to be changed at will, can we ever be certain about anything? I was thinking about 1984 earlier this week as we began to approach Parashas Tetzaveh, Parashas Zachor, and the upcoming Purim holiday. On the one hand, at the end of the Purim story, Esther begs the Chachamim to record her in the canon of Tanakh so that she wouldn't be forgotten. She was afraid that as a result of the incidents in the Megillah, she was now going to spend the rest of her life as a Persian queen. She asked the rabbis, Kisvuni Lidoros, to make sure that her name and her heroism would not be forgotten in the annals of Jewish history. And thus Esther too, and the rabbis of the Talmud appreciated the authenticity and truth of our timeless Torah and wanted to be remembered there for her impact. At the same time, we find the opposite seems to be on Hashem's agenda in regard to Amalek. In the special maftir we're going to read this Shabbos, we're told, that we're supposed to obliterate the memory of Amalek from underneath the heavens. Now, why would Hashem want us to obliterate a part of history? And how can we properly wipe out Himcha, the memory of Amalek? Didn't they serve an important role for us in multiple periods of history? Wouldn't just simply wiping them out take the lessons that we're to learn from our entanglements with them, from the time of the Jews being in the Midbar, to the episode with King Shaul, which is part of this week's Haftorah, to the Purim story and beyond, and make them not exist? Isn't there an inherent danger in that? So why would Hashem want us to take away the truth of history? And what are we supposed to do with the command of wiping away the history when Hashem tells us about that same people, Zachor, to remember the episode? How do we make sense of wiping away history when we are, in fact, commanded to do the opposite, Zachor? And while we're on the subject of memory in this week's different readings, I want to call your attention to another memory game we came across in this week's Parsha. Actually, it's the memory that's critical because the reminder does not appear in this week's text. You see, that's right, because for the first and only time since Moshe appeared on the scene in the Torah at the beginning of Chumash Shmos, his name does not appear in this week's Torah reading. And the Torah commentaries cite the Zohar HaKadosh, which explain that in the aftermath of the Egel episode we'll read about in next week's Parsha, Moshe challenged Hashem to forgive the people, and if not, Mecheni nami sifracha asher kasafta, erase me from your book. Now Rashi notes that Moshe wanted to be erased from the entire Torah, so that people shouldn't think that he wasn't strong enough to save them. And Rashbam and Chizkuni, among others, suggest that Moshe wanted to be wiped away from the Sefer HaChaim, from the Book of Life, as he'd rather not be inscribed there. And while Hashem forgives the people and meets Moshe's ultimatum, Hashem erases his name in this week's Parsha as a reminder. However, Moshe's request itself, no matter how you slice it, is strange. We know Moshe emes, B'saraso emes. Moshe is true, his Torah is true. So how could he suggest a falsification of truth by just simply erasing his existence? And why remove his name from this parsha, which seems to give into the erasure concept, at least somewhat, in its intention? But again, if we keep using the word viata and you over and over, which clearly keeps Moshe present in our memory, have we really written him out? What's the purpose of leaving Moshe's names out if he's going to be quite present anyway? And Esther worries about falling into the memory hole. Wiping out her memory of Amalek seems like the Torah's goal. And Moshe is not mentioned in our entire parsha, but is not totally stricken from the Torah scroll. It all has to make you think that in the question of rewriting history, what's the Torah's role? Make no mistake about it. The Torah is not too excited about wiping out any Jew or part of Jewish history. While we have a curse, Yamach Shemo, may his name be obliterated, we're told by our halachicists not to use that curse towards another Jew. The famed Tzachor Rebbe, the Avnei Nezer, explains that if we truly believed in cursing someone to the point of Yamach Shemo, that his name should be obliterated and wiped out, we would exclude his wife if he were to die without children from the mitzvah of Yibum. And since we do not want to see another Jew obliterated from existence. Rabbi Menashe Klein adds that if we did obliterate someone from Jewish history, then we're also obliterating them from Jewish destiny. And perhaps the person's future generations will have a purpose in existence, and cursing them that they should be cut off. It's just frankly not a Jewish idea. The Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh and the Malbim both note that the idea of mechia, of wiping someone out of existence, cuts the soul of a person from its source, making him or her totally irrelevant. Such a system cannot be allowed to happen to even the most distant Jew, or to the great fabric that is Am Yisrael, because it would need it to be missing in part of its whole truth. Wipe one Jew away, there's a hole, and that hole exists inside the whole truth. So therefore, no matter how distant a Jew or the Jewish people are, we do our best to throw a lifeline to he or she who is in danger of being obliterated. In fact, the Gemara tells us that there was a special place called Even HaToen, the rock of the claimer, where people who found or lost objects would go in order to help people be reunited with their lost objects. The Gemara tells us that there was something special about that rock. Eina Nimoach. It never disintegrated. Frankly, the Even HaToen couldn't be erased. And why is that significant? And why is it called Even HaToen, Claimer's Rock? What did this rock claim? Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad explains that this rock not only helped people find lost objects, rather when the masses saw the efforts that the people went to bring lost items to their owners, they were also inspired to go there to find the biggest lost items in their lives. They would go to find their lost selves. Claimer's Rock saw to it that every Jew could be inspired to return to a meaningful spiritual life. Every neshama saw that Eina Nimoach, that it would never get erased. Moshe was Bnei Yisrael's Even HaToen in the desert. When they lost their way with the sin of the Egel, he led them in whatever way he could to help them find their way. The mechia that he spoke of was similar to the kind that we're commanded to do with our weights. When the Talmud demands that weights that we use in our business need to be wiped down. And of course, it would also allow for the cleansing of Bnei Yisrael. In that regard, when we wipe our weights and our people, neither they nor he would ever be lost in Torah destiny. Whether by name or action, Moshe's impact would be felt in Torah history forever. Amalek would experience the opposite end. When Amalek attacks the Jewish people, their sole goal is to knock us off our path towards our destined place with Hashem. Try as they may, every effort will fail. Their failed attempts won't inspire others to rise against our people, and their purpose, the Amalek's purpose, will be forgotten not only in Jewish history, but in world history as well. For as famed author Dan Brown noted, in history the loser is obliterated, and the winner writes the history books. Amalek's impact is to be obliterated, and we are to do so by remembering our claim, by finding ourselves and excising those who stop us from our destiny as a people from any role in the future. As far as Amalek and Amalekim are concerned, Yemach Shemam v'zichram. Esther feared the same excision. Like Sota, about whom we test with waters where the name of Hashem was erased, Umacha el Mayim Amarim, Esther thought that she might be viewed as having gone too far. And so hence she pleaded, please don't forget me. After all, she did what was necessary, like Moshe did, for the sake of the Jewish people. Taking up her cause, Chazal saw to it that she too would not be erased. While secular society grapples with the erasure of history and narrative, Torah life and lessons do not erase episodes and people. While our heroes and heroines might take big risks to wipe the filth off our people at great personal risk, they do so in order to make sure that we remain strong like the Even HaTohen and never get swept up in the sin or wiped away. We honor them and make sure that we become stronger in order to take on and wipe away the challenges of an Amalek, making their role in existence useless and easily forgotten. Through it all, we continue to march together as we did in the Midbar, and at the time of the Purim story, with every member of Klal Yisrael fully accounted for, heading towards a time when we will see one more erasure, as Yeshayahu declared, Bila hamavis lanetzach, where death will be banished forevermore. Umacha Hashem Elokim dima me'al kol panim, and Hashem will wipe off tears off every face. And the shame of his people he shall remove from upon the entire earth. We wait patiently and make sure that we never wipe away a fellow Jew or the impact that our Jewish people have on one another. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu make it so that we experience Umacha Hashem Elokim Dima Me'al Panim. Wishing you and yours a Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shalom to all.